Marshall Teague is an actor who appeared in over 130 films and TV shows. His talent for balancing starring roles with powerful supporting characters has allowed him to build a varied and pivotal body of work. His theatrical breakout role was Jimmy Reno in the 1989 cult classic Roadhouse. From there, he went on to work in The Rock with Sean Connery and Armageddon with Bruce Willis, to name a few. He was also a reoccurring star on TV series like Walker, Texas Ranger, American Heiress, and Babylon 5. He also had roles on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager, and Sliders. But us leapers know him as Wayne in the Quantum Leap episode, How the Tess Was Won. Mr. Teague, it is an honor to have you on the Quantum Leap podcast. Could you tell me a little bit about how you got the part for Wayne in How the Tess Was Won, and a little bit about the filming of your episode of Quantum Leap?
Well, Donald Belisario knew that I've been a horseman for quite some time, competed in cutting horses and roping, bulldogging. You got to have a hobby, when you're not doing that. And when How the Tess Was Won, I came in to read for it, and the director, and excuse me if I don't remember his name, but he said, "Can you ride a horse?" And Don Belisario said, "That's one question you don't have to ask." He said, "He can ride a horse, so let's just get to it." So we did the reading, and the guy said, he's perfect. So he said, "Fine, let's just cut through this and hire him." So they said this while I was in the room. So I said, "Fine, thanks, guys."
Was everybody else in the episode as at home on a horse as you?
Not all, no. Everybody is at different levels, but they also have. That's why they have great wranglers. They have great wranglers that get a horse to fit the person that is going to be on the horse. And, that way, if they're not as comfortable, a wrangler can turn around and he knows the horses by first name basis. And they just say, that one goes to this person right here. And just, they're great people. All the crew members, cast, crew, they're just wonderful and they make you feel at home. So, it's kind of hard to have a bad day.
Where was that filmed? Did it look a big open ranch, maybe?
Well, it was on a ranch out in, what would that area? That'd be Magic Mountain, Castaic. Yeah, there was some ranches out there that at the time were, in a 10, 20,000 acre range. So when you go out there to shoot, you're shooting horizon to horizon and not see a fence. And they have cattle that, they had, cattle that ran out there anyway. So basically we would just work the cattle that were there.
Did anybody fall off a horse or anything like that? Anything like that happened during the
I'm not going to say that because that would be improper. Say that somebody might have had a bad day on a horse and got up on the wrong side of the horse. There were a couple of incidents, but they learned quickly. It's amazing how quickly you learn to get up on the correct side of the horse and to not make him mad.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to make them mad. They're bigger than us, right?
Well, they are, but, most of them, the amazing thing about riding a horse is they can feel you. They feel whether you are balanced. The old saying about riding a horse is keep a leg on each side and your brain in the middle. If you do that and you feel what the horse is doing, he's going to feel you. He's going to know exactly if you do or do not know what you're doing. That's why they have different horses for different people. But if they know that you know what you're doing, they're going to give you a horse that can carry the mail. And my horse in particular could carry the mail. He was very astute, shall we say.
What did you think of your part that you got on the show? And tell me more about Wayne.
Let's talk about Wayne for a minute. You talk about a ranch hand that has worked his entire life on a ranch, has come up through the early days when he was setting everybody else's tack, cleaning their tack when it came in, tack being the saddles, the bridles, whatever else a cowboy wore. When he was young, to the point where he was a full-blown range cowboy. And he was very good at what he did. He could rope and ride, break a horse. He could herd cattle. He knew the whole business. But the problem was in the show that he had a yearning, shall we say. He really, really liked Tess, who was played by Carrie Leiser. And Wayne thought that the two of them should be together. And Carrie, being a very headstrong ranch owner-manager along with her dad at the time, I think she's made a statement that said, when I can find somebody that can ride, rope, and run a ranch as good as I can, I'll marry him. Said that to his dad. And she was pretty good. She was very good. And Wayne was pretty good, but she just was one of those wild horses. wasn't ready to be tamed. And he got very jealous, I got to say, of the Scott Bakula character, when he came in there, because he couldn't understand what would she see in a veterinarian that she didn't see in a good wrench hand, you know what I mean? So, that obvious space between them didn't grow to a boil over point, but it grew, and you could see he was very agitated. But as usual, Dean Stockwell would jump in there every once in a while and tell Scott to do this, say this, or don't do this, and don't say this. He had a conscience on his shoulder all the time.
Did you have a good experience filming the episode?
Oh, always. You always have a great experience. I mean, you get together with fellow actors, especially actors of that quality, and they know you're equally good at what you do. The name of the game at that point is just bring the best show you can. And, there's no egos. I mean, Scott didn't have any ego at all. Couldn't have been a kinder person to work with. He was very jovial, outgoing, welcoming, made you feel right at home from the first day you got there. Came over to you first day on the set. Hi, I'm Scott Bakula. Welcome to our show. Looking forward to working with you. And I mean, how can you start off a show by feeling bad about that? You can't. It's just impossible. Well, I mean, and the days. Let's talk about that. You're sitting out there on 10,000 acres, and they're asking you to work cattle here and do this shot and come through this draw and all this other stuff, and you're out there in the wide open spaces on a horse, and then somebody will say, Marshall, can you go out there and bring those cows back in? We need them for the shot. And they know you well enough to know that they say, go out there and herd those cattle back. You're going to bring them right back. And then you go right back to your place, say, okay, get on your mark. You get on your mark, and they say, roll camera. Okay, fine. It was just great.
Does it take a little bit extra time to film the episode when you are dealing with, like, being on horseback and maybe they're not cooperating all the time?
It does when you're talking about horses working with cattle, because cattle have a mind of their own. They don't want to go where you want to put them. So holding them in place is a matter of keeping them calm and working them slowly. You don't push them. You heard people say, go out there and push those cattle in there. Well, you don't push them. You urge them on. And you urge them at a rate to not get them all hyped up and that kind of thing. But when you're talking about making animals cooperate with hitting a mark and saying a line at a certain place, yeah, it can be a little bit difficult. When you've got good horses and you've got obviously a good director and great crew, they understand that, and they set the shot accordingly.
What was it like to work with Carrie Leiser?
Oh, she was great. She was really a pistol. I mean, she came to work in the morning, and here's this blonde, curly-headed lady that bop in the morning and sit down and get her makeup on, then get in her jeans, her chaps, and all the rest of her hat, the whole 9 yards, and then she would turn into Tess. And when she gave orders, she gave orders. And it was really kind of interesting because you could see the transition between the two characters. From when they arrive in the morning and they go through makeup, and when you're playing Tess and working on a range, it's not beauty makeup, it's dirt and makeup. So here's a lady that would be in the mud or the dirt and throwing a cow down to supposedly be branded or something like that. She made it look like she had been doing it her whole life. I
noticed Diamond Farnsworth was in the episode as one of the other cowboys. Was there a bunch of stunt people on set?
There were several. A lot of the guys that are what they call the outriders. These are the position riders. These are guys that most of them stunt guys that are and Little Diamond Farnsworth is a very dear friend of mine.
Oh, awesome! He's a great guy. I talked to him too.
Little Diamond I've known for 30 years. I've known him a long time. And he's just a great stunt coordinator, great second unit director, great stunt man. His dad was probably one of the best on a horse that you have ever seen, Big Diamond Farnsworth. I'm going to tell you a secret. I don't know whether Diamond mentioned this or not, but remember when all the guys would get shot by the arrows by the Indians in the Westerns?
Yeah.
And the arrow was perfect in the right spot every time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was Big Diamond Farnsworth shooting an arrow.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
And he would say they would put a box on the guy, on his chest or on his back or whatever. And the arrow wasn't, particularly, it wasn't coming out of a 60-pound or a 70-pound pull bow.
Mm.
It was coming out of a nominal bow, about 40 pounds, but it was enough to get at close range the arrow to go where he went. And Big Diamond, the Diamond Farnsworth's dad, was so good. He was a world-class archer. And he wasn't shooting these on a string. He literally shot these out of a recurved bow.
Wow. That's insane.
He would say, just don't move.
Yeah.
He said, be in this position, and I'll do it. And he would do it. And he did it, oh, gosh, I don't know how many hundreds of times he did it. And finally, he just said, I heard this from him myself. And he said, sooner or later, everybody misses. He had never missed up to that time, by the way. Had never missed. And he just one day just said, I can't do it anymore. And he wouldn't do it anymore. It's not that he couldn't do it anymore. Like I said, he was as good with a bow and arrow as anyone I've ever seen. But he actually did this freehand.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. When you think you're the guy with the box on your chest or the thing on your back, that protector that little arrow is going to stick in the back for a minute, and you're supposed to go flying off the horse or whatever and play dead,
Yeah.
And that a guy actually shot that arrow at you.
That's a trust exercise if I ever heard of one.
Well, most of the people that were doing that were people that knew him very well and knew how good he was. Just like you were saying a minute ago about Diamond being on the set as one of the cowboys. Yeah, he was. He's as good a hand on a horse as you can ask for. And when we were out there, he would just say, Marshall, to go do this, or I'm going to roll this horse over this way, and we're going to do this. And that's kind of, okay, fine. Just call action. Now, that was not for everybody. Yeah, I was lucky to be one of those guys that they knew and trusted. Most of them were stuntmen. I'm not a stuntman. I'm an actor, but I did a lot of my own. Well, I did most of my stunts for 28 years. So,
how did you get into acting? Did you always have the acting bug, or?
Not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, that was probably the last thing in the world I wanted to be was an actor. I was a cop, and I was undercover, or going undercover, and I was trying to figure out a way to how I could be a better undercover cop. And I came up with I had a brain fade or something one night, and I said, I wonder if I studied acting, if that would make me a better undercover cop. I mean, that's kind of an idiotic statement to ask a guy that has no intentions of being an actor. And I started studying. I went to some people, and I ended up went privately under Lee Strasberg in New York. And I was paying him privately, to teach me, help me, as best he could to find a way to become characters. And studied with him, studied in little theater out of Memphis. But I was actually a deputy sheriff, and I had absolutely no intentions. Can you imagine being a cop? I weighed 230 pounds. I had a 34-inch waist, had an 18-inch neck. I had a partner that made me look like a shrimp, 6'4", 312 pounds, and think I was going to go out to Hollywood and be an actor. I mean, what would my fellow cops say? Well, I studied, and for some reason I kind of caught the bug, and I wrote a letter to another great stuntman who's no longer with us, who just passed away last year, Hal Needham. And I wrote him a letter and told him my qualifications. He said, well, you're certainly qualified to be a stuntman, but why don't you try acting? I said, you got the looks for acting, why don't you try it? So, he was very honest. He said, you certainly got the qualifications to be one, but why don't you try this? And I did. One day I just said, I got to know. So I packed up everything I owned, which wasn't a lot. I threw it in the back of a K5 Blazer, so that tells you how much I had. And I headed off to Hollywood.
Days of Our Lives, that was one of your earliest credits. How did you get on Days of Our Lives?
By a fluke. An agent I had in the early days said, the very early days, she said, this is some of the best training you can get. Why don't you go in and read for this? And then she got me a reading. I went in and read, and, they said, you fit the character. You have the look of the character, and I didn't know. I mean, I got a call, I think it was a Saturday evening, and they said, we're sending you over a script. You start Monday. And I looked at the script, and I had 28 pages. You either got to buckle down, as they say right now, and get to it, because, they shoot very quick. They don't mess around. And you're going in there a lot of times, and you're shooting with people that have been on the show for, 3, 4, 5, even, much more than that. Some of them spent 30 years on soap operas. And they know what they're doing. They've already got this down. They have their technique is down to how they can do 28 pages in a day, because, they basically shoot a show a day.
Were you able to memorize all that?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
How
do you do that? You just do it, right, I guess?
Well, you do it, but, there's techniques, and luckily Strasberg taught me a little bit about this. He said, go home, pick paragraphs out of anything, a magazine, a newspaper, anything you want to do. Read it, then read it again, and then put it down. And then talk to yourself about what of that paragraph you can remember, or 2 paragraphs, or whatever. You start picking up the fact that you can look at it, read it, get it, and then there's the other trick. You have to learn how to perform it correctly and not look like an idiot that's standing up there and reading "See Spot Run." You have to become the character. So there's little games we all play with ourselves, mind games, to get ourselves to understand it. But memorizing dialogue is really not a problem. I've gone into cold readings and they give you 8 pages, 3 scenes. Which ones do you want to do? Let's do them all, because you know it. If it's well written, you can do it easy. If it's somebody that thinks everything that they wrote is, written in stone, but doesn't make any sense, It's very difficult.
Once you've filmed those lines, you immediately dump them out of your head?
No, because, there's always, we're going to maybe do a turnaround, we're going to come back. You can't do that. You've got to understand that once they shoot you, you've got to sort of understand they're shooting other people too. They're going to shoot the leads first. So you've got to do your lines for the leads, and they're going to turn around and come around to you. So it's not about once you've done them, you forget them. You can't do that. You've got to keep it in your head till the day is over, and they say, that is a wrap, and they know they've got it. No, they don't necessarily go out of your head. You still remember them, but you go on to the next day. If they were to come back and say, what was that scene yesterday? And you could, believe it or not, you could sit around and say, we were doing this, and this is what I was saying. But you don't remember it word for word like you do the day you go in. You understand the context of it.
It's interesting to learn how to do that, learn how the process works. That's cool.
So I've remembered scripts for years.
Really?
Yeah, what I said, what I didn't say, what was in the middle of the scene, who was there. Surprisingly enough, you remember things like that. It's not, you don't remember all of them. Obviously, I don't know anybody that does that. But there are certain scenes and certain people that you work with, you sit there and say, yeah, this was going on, and it was very special. And there are things about the scene that you don't forget. You may not remember it word for word, but you could go back and say, I can give you the entire context of the scene.
I am a big fan of Star Trek.
Oh, you and so many others.
It's a great show. It's a great franchise. I'd like to know what you remember about both Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Can we start with Deep Space Nine?
Of course, yes.
Yes. Can you tell me what you remember about your episode and the Hippocratic Oath?
In Deep Space Nine, I played one of the first Jemadar. I don't know if you remember what the Jemadar were.
Yeah, a lot of makeup, and they had the Tetracell white.
Yeah, they had the Tetracell white, but they were based off a rhino.
Really?
They actually developed the makeup for the Jemadar by looking at different photographs of a rhino. If you notice, they're on the sides of their head, there's little horns and things like that.
Yeah. Michael Westmore likes to pull from nature.
Yes, he does. Very much so. He and Camille Calvé, who was doing the makeup at the time, they developed a skin texture. If you notice, the skin texture is very much like that of a rhino. Very tough, a tough-skinned group. But they were a warring nation, by heart, but not necessarily like to be controlled, but they were. The white kept them in control, and you knew that they didn't like it, but you knew they couldn't do without it. Because when you take something that is a part of everyday news, and you read constantly, and you hear constantly about people that are addictive personalities, and addicted to drugs, and as terrible as that is, I hate it, I really do. Because I have seen over the years, as having, been an officer of the law, I've seen so many young people that are addicted to drugs, and it's a terrible thing to watch. It really is, especially when you know them when they are straight, and you see this over a couple of years, this deterioration. The Jemadar were that. They were a proud nation. Then slowly they were taken over and controlled, and they hated it. And there's many people of addictive personalities that don't necessarily like their addiction, but they can't necessarily shake it.
Yeah, I think we all know people that have been affected by addiction, and I'm very lucky that I've never tried any of that stuff and don't plan to.
Well, neither have I. I just don't have it in me to do. But, I have seen it, and it's not something that I think is very pretty. especially when I see these beautiful kids, beautiful children, beautiful young people. And I mean beautiful either personally in their hearts or something like this, and all of a sudden I see it destroyed by the use of that. It's a terrible thing.
The story ended good for the Jem'Hadar. I think they finally were able to get off the Tetrasil White.
It took a while, but yes, they were. And I think they were able to return to their population, if I remember correctly. They returned to their original mantra of life. But it took a while to get them off of that. They were a tough group. But you didn't want to make them mad.
No.
Somebody said, don't make them mad. You didn't want to make the Jem'Hadar mad.
Not at all. What was that set like? I've heard stories that it was very serious.
Very. It depended on the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to something like this, no, they did not, there wasn't a lot of play. It wasn't that it was an unpleasant set. It was not. It was a very professional set. The writers, all the people that wrote for Star Trek and everything else, they had a form that they wrote around. They designed it that way. So when you watch the show, I don't want to call it militaristic because it's not. What it was regimented, I think, is a way, because it had the importance of what they were trying to do, what they were trying to accomplish, what they were trying to change or get out or save or whatever was very regimented, and it was very important. You notice everything about the shows, there was a point that had to do with the importance of the show. And they were not going to let that wane. And they made sure that you understood that this was not about yuck. We'll just get through it. No, it is important. And we will play the importance of the scene. No one took it for granted.
Maybe that's part of what keeps the Star Trek world very real to the fans.
Well, you connect with that. Mm-hmm. You connect with that importance of when you are meeting a person. Say you've never met a person from Mozambique, or you've never met a person from Uganda or Russia or Iceland. You don't come up and talk to him like you've known him your whole life. You want to know something about him. You want to know who he is, what he is, something about his country. He's certainly going to ask you. In many cases, people, the African nation, Eastern Europe, things like that, know more about us than we take the time to know about them. So they're going to ask you questions. You better be ready for them, and you better be ready to answer the questions, because it's very important. And I think that is a good way of looking at Star Trek, because it wasn't about everybody being together all the time as one nation. It was about reaching out and finding new civilizations, which is part of the statement.
And then they brought you back for Voyager. In one of my favorite episodes of Voyager, I have a whole bunch of favorites, of course, because I like Star Trek.
Distant Origin?
Yeah, Distant Origin. I'm watching with my wife, and I'm excited. I'm like, wait till you get to the Dinosaur episode. And she's like, what? Tell me about that episode.
Well, I played Hulk, and Hulk was the head of security for that particular species. When I first came in, I was sitting there, and I talked to him. I said, I'd like to be a T-Rex. No. I said, why not? I said, no, these are basically herbivores.
Right.
But they're a species, they're an advanced species that on our planet, they evolved 200 million years ago. But they were very prominent. They're subspecies that our species here on this planet were an offshoot of them. And they still existed. They were very much there. If you noticed, it was a very organized civilization. Very proud, very wary. Hulk was, exceptionally wary just because of his job description. But, the makeup I always found very interesting because of the teeth, which were the grinders, for plant eaters, that kind of thing, as opposed to the canines, which are that of the carnivores. But it was different. But the intensity that they lived by was quite real, if you think about it. Herbivores were the prey of the predators, of the T-Rex and all the raptors and all that kind of stuff. So obviously they had to be very aware of themselves and their surroundings, which the civilization was, and then have the pride of the herd, which I don't know whether you noticed that or not. The herbivores were herding species, so they stayed together in that way. So I thought it was quite interesting the way they tied that together.
What did you think about the message of the episode, kind of accepting what you're being told or trying to find the truth?
That was interesting that you asked that question, because in that particular episode, it was about discovering and what is your own truth? What do you believe yourself? That kind of thing. I mean, that question came up a lot while we were shooting it, and I don't think that anybody came up with the absolute answer. I found that fans themselves have come up with better answers than what we came up on the day. But that's true. They've watched it, obviously more times than we have over the years because we're out doing what we do. But you remember the time, what you did, the message, the fact that you were called down. I was called down in my position. I was basically called down by the Queen. Are you willing to accept this? Are you willing to accept what you're being handed? You ask a lot of questions, and when you only have 8 days to ask them.
That's the thing about TV. There, you just there's no time, right?
There isn't, but there is. If it's important to you, if the characters are important to you, and who you're working with is important to you, you're going to ask questions. And if all you're doing is coming in there to, get a paycheck, then you shouldn't be there to start out with. You need to go in there and really try to find out why this character is proud. Why is he not proud? Why is he wary? I mean, if you're talking about a herd animal and you're talking about people that they very well could have looked at as predators on them, wouldn't you be wary?
Yeah.
Would you not ask questions?
Mm-hmm.
I would.
Yeah. I love that you've put that much thought into the character. That, to me, it means that you took it as seriously portraying the characters as I do enjoying them.
I don't take any role, and 37 years I've played a lot, but I don't take any role lightly. I really don't. Some of them are not as difficult as others because they're more in your, what you call your ballpark,
mm-hmm.
but you can't take them lightly. Because if you take them lightly, I'll give you an example. One of the greatest teachers that I had was Lillian Burns. She ended up marrying George Sidney, who did a lot of the Elvis films, but she was the head of talent for MGM for 19 years. She gave Clark Gable his screen test to give you an idea of what her mettle is.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me one day, I'm going to teach you an important lesson. I said, okay. I was looking at this little lady, and she was about 5'2". She was 82 years old when I started working with her. And she pointed that little finger, and she looked through these glasses that were so thick they looked like the bottom of a Coke bottle. But her intensity and her sincerity was unrebuked. She looked at me and she said, a camera is a truth machine. You cannot be playing the part of a dog and think cat because meow comes across instead of bow wow. A camera does not lie. It can't lie. So if you're not in your character or you don't believe your character or you haven't thought about your character, when that camera rolls, it's going to show it.
That's very true.
Without question. And I've had days on the scenes and as a matter of fact, my wife one time, my wife Lindy, I was doing a scene. I was in a walker and I did the scene and she was there and I looked over at her and she puts her mouth up to her hand like she was yawning. And I went, really? And she said, oh yeah. Okay. And I thought about what we did and she was right. She was right. We didn't give it the energy that it deserved, and Chuck and I both went back. He said, she's tough. I said, yeah, she is. So we thought about it, went back and redid it, and it was much better.
If anybody will give it to you straight, it's your wife, right?
Every time. Every time. No question about it.
I want to ask you a little bit about the makeup on Star Trek and also how it was the same or different with your roles on Babylon 5.
Wow. Okay. Different and similar. And that's the best way to say it. The makeup artists on Star Trek were meticulous as they were on Babylon 5. There was no sidestepping for either one. They were both equally into the game. The style of makeup on Star Trek was much more contoured, because we were playing different types of creatures, different races. When you're creating a Jemadar, you're creating a dinosaur, for instance. You have to create that. You really can't put a human or a humanistic slant to it. You have to take them as the species, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Star Trek was very good. Babylon 5, on the other hand, if I can meld the two together here, Babylon 5 was a city, a very large city in space. And it wasn't about just one species being in the city, like any city, whether it's New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, pick one. They're made up of people of all denominations, from every part of the world. They're all there. And they all live together. So that was the difference between Babylon 5 really and Star Trek. Star Trek was a ship that traveled to civilizations. Babylon 5 was a civilization.
Really was. You're such a handsome guy. It seems strange that they keep putting a bunch of rubber makeup on you. Do you get kind of a reputation for one of the people that's able to wear that much makeup?
That's one of the things. As a matter of fact, the first episode of Babylon 5, which was called Infection, the makeup that I wore there was the first full body, head to toe prosthetic makeup that was done. I mean, it was a full prosthetic from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. The suit weighed 72 pounds.
Wow. Were you glued into that whole thing?
Yes. It took, I came in at 2:30 in the morning to start work at 6:30 in the morning. And the temperature inside that suit, by the way, just for those that don't know, by the third, I think it was the third day, because I shot for 9 days in that suit. Third day, they had to bring in a cool suit to go under it, because I was losing on the average of 11 to 15 pounds a day in sweat.
And doesn't that foam rubber just absorb the sweat?
No, it does not.
Oh, it doesn't? That's good.
No, it does not. People think that it does, but it does not. Because they coat the inside of the suit.
Oh, okay.
They do a thin film on the inside of the suit, to make it so they can get it on and off. If they didn't, it would adhere to you. So, when you're in it, you're basically, you're not wearing a whole heck of a lot of anything. You're just not. You might have, some silks on. That's basically it. So you can have a little bit of a barrier there. But they finally had to punch holes in the bottom of the boots that they had built into the suit so the sweat would run out. I would stand over in the corner with a guy with a mop. I'm serious, man.
That's crazy.
The third day, because the temperature inside that suit was 108 degrees.
Yeah, with the lights and everything?
Everything else. And, when you were, the day we were doing the fight scene, they punched one of those turkey things that, they test the temperature of a turkey. Right. It was 114.
Oh, my goodness.
I was drinking water and Gatorade and everything else like that, but it would just come out through my pores and then out down the suit and out the holes in the bottom of my boots. And the guy would walk behind me with a mop.
Oh, man.
And I would step in a sand box before I would walk on, or whatever it was, chalk box or sand box, so I could get the moisture off the bottom of the shoes and do the scene.
Were you okay? Were you ever close to, passing out or anything?
One day I got a little light in it. They can't take you out of the suit.
Right.
We were doing a fight scene. It was very, it was a long day. Michael O'Hare, I was doing it with Michael O'Hare, and, and tossing boxes and crates and bashing things and all, the usual. I got a little light, and I sat down for a minute, got some fluids in. Man, I was okay. It gave me about 20 minutes. They brought some electrolytes in. I got those in my system, and I was ready to go. But it happens. Now, the other character, Talon, which was my second character on Babylon 5, and one of the loves of my life. I love that character. Man, that was absolutely a gem of a character. I worked with Andreas Katsulas, who is a classically trained actor, and, we were great. We'd come in the morning about 4:30. We'd sit down in the chairs. They'd start putting the makeup on, because we had all the suits we had to put on in layers. But we were Andreas and Marshall until we put the eyes in, the red eyes. Once the eyes went in, he was Jakar and I was Talon. We never referred to each other by our proper names.
Did he give you any instructions on how that race conducted themselves or mannerisms or anything?
Well, he did. He was actually quite giving in that respect. He said that, first of all, they're a very proud race, a very honorable race that has been put upon by other races and, and basically have been put in a position of almost submission, but not quite. And because when we formed the, alliance where we could sit down and we had basically a Congress and we had a voice, we started getting our position as a nation and a people or as a species back. And Jakar was very prominent in doing that, which made the passing of the baton off to me. Very moving day.
Yeah, a great show, Babylon 5. Anybody who hasn't seen it, I think they should check it out. It's really, really good.
It really is, and then there's a bunch of great characters on it, just like Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek had these wonderful, wonderful characters. Babylon 5 had these wonderful, wonderful characters that you kind of made friends with. If you're a Trekkie or you're a Babylon 5 person, everybody had their special character that they liked. And it didn't matter,
Yeah, see, a lot of those shows people get scared off because of the prosthetics, or they might think their characters are funny looking. But once you watch a show and you get into the characters, that's what it's all about, the characters.
Well, they ask you right up front, first of all, they say, are you claustrophobic? Because when I did Infection, that was a full body cast. I laid down in a thing that looked like a casket, And they poured this stuff all over me, and the only thing I was breathing through is 2 straws. And I laid there for 40 minutes. And this stuff heats up as you're in it. Now, if you're claustrophobic, you can't handle that. And I'm not claustrophobic at all. So I almost fell asleep, but they came up and they said, Marshall, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. They left me laying there, and they went to lunch.
We'll be back.
And that's what they said. They said, we'll be back. We're going to step out for a minute. They said, while you cure, we're going to step out for a minute, which I thought was maybe a cigarette break or something like that. But no, they went to lunch.
What can you do? You're in it, right?
You're not going anywhere, that's for sure. And then they create this unbelievable character, this creature, this, biohuman machine that comes out of this. And you look at it and you go, wow. And all I had to do was lay there for 40 minutes and bake in this plaster of Paris crap. It really was quite unique.
After going through that, a forehead or something's not so bad to get glued on, right?
No. After that, forehead. Honestly, Andreas, I have watched him nod off while they were putting it on him because he'd catch a nap before we'd start. He'd sit over in the chair next to me because we always went in together when we were working on the same show and went in together. He brought us in, and more times I can't tell you, he'd nod off for 15 minutes. And they'd just continue working on him, sticking it on him, all the rest. He wouldn't move, never flinched, nothing. So he was, he was quite a role model to work beside, and he was an extraordinarily giving actor.
That's good to hear. I really enjoyed his character in that series. Probably my favorite, I think.
Well, I must say he's probably my favorite also, because when you work with somebody like that, Talon was a samurai. He was a warrior. You didn't see him carry a space gun or anything like that.
Nope.
Everybody else had all these blasters and all this stuff. What did he carry? He carried a sword. That's the only weapon he carried. And you got to be pretty confident when the only weapon that you carry is a sword.
Especially when everybody else is carrying ray guns and stuff.
They got ray guns, and you're carrying a sword, and you're not a bit afraid. And they're more afraid of you than you are of them.
Can I ask you a little bit about Sliders? That's a show that comes up a lot when we're talking about Quantum Leap. It's kind of in the same genre and around the same time.
That was a ball. A good friend of mine was one of the producers and also directed a couple episodes, David Peckinpah. It was Sam Peckinpah's grandson. The show itself was just great. I mean, the people were terrific, and they were a good cast. The crew was terrific. They got along, which is nice, when you're doing a show like that, an ensemble group where everybody gets along. There's not really any prima donnas. They might have a prima donna moment, but it's not lasting. But the show was fun.
You played a few different parts. Yeah,
I did. I played probably one of the ugliest guys. Basically he looked like a walking piranha. I think it was General Cronus in the dying fields. They hunted humans for sport and God knows what else. They made them very militaristic. He was exceedingly militaristic and a very angry man. I mean, he just had an angry, whatever you want to call them, Cro-Mags. I mean, they were called Cro-Mags, but I don't think any of them woke up having a good day. Or maybe that was a good day for them. I don't know. That could have been one of their charming, daisy moments, when they wake up in the morning, when they sharpen their teeth.
Yeah, they were basically what if the Cro-Magnons had kept evolving and not the humans?
The tattooed humans that they hunted basically were a sport and obviously for slave labor. But it was one of those things that, yes, they kept evolving. They were a very intelligent, race. Very, very intelligent race, but they were a very... I seem to play a lot of these, don't I? They were quite a demanding group. Let's just put it that way. I mean, even in the second episode, that I played as Sliders, where I played a sheriff in Way Out West, I had what was there? Who was the guy in the black hat and the evil guy? He was a Cro-Mag.
Yep, that was a big story arc on Sliders for a while.
Yeah, it was. Well, they were kind of a group you didn't want to run into.
Yes. And
really hated it when you saw them coming. So, I can understand that, and they jumped time just like they did.
Right. So they were the big bad of the series. But that's awesome that you did that. I wanted to also ask you another one of my favorite shows. You've been on so many of my favorite shows. This is great.
Well, I'm very honored that I've been on so many of your favorite shows.
Yeah, you can tell the kind of genre I like, the sci-fi kind of stuff. Stargate SG-1. What was your experience like on that show?
I started off with MacGyver.
Right. Richard Dean Anderson in both.
Yeah. And we started back there, and I did couple of shows there. I did MacGyver's Women and what was that other episode that I did?
You played Logan in one of them, I think.
Yeah, Logan was an ex-Navy SEAL that had saved MacGyver's life when we were a special ops team.
Right.
I'd saved his life, and I got washed and couldn't understand why. And basically, it was a bad case of PTSD he was going through, and nobody was there to help him. So when you start there, and then you work with Richard Dean through a couple of those shows, who's an absolute gem to work with. And I'm just going to tell a story about him, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes, that'd be great.
I go up there, and of course, he can play hockey. He's got this local team that they put together through crew members and other people in town that they get together. They have this team. They play this league hockey. And I go up there to do the show. And, of course, Richard Dean, being the ever humorous human being that he is, and practical joker, he says, well, if you're going to be on the show, you got to play hockey. I said, Richard, with all due respect, I've never been on ice skates in my life. He said, it's a piece of cake. Shoes are built like trains. You can't fall down. It's easy. It's nothing to it. You'll pick it up easy. So I get in all this hockey gear. I look like the Hulk. And I go out there on ice, and I have never felt more out of my element in my entire life. I couldn't stand up for the crap. I didn't know what they were doing. I never played hockey in my life. I never ice skated in my life. So I asked him, I said, okay, I got one question. He said, what are the rules? And Richard looks around at me, and he's got this wry grin on his face. He says, don't let that guy or any of those guys get that little puck in this net. I go, seriously? He says, seriously. I said, okay. So he didn't say how. He just said, don't let them get in the net. He didn't say anything about throwing body blocks or anything like that. He said, no, you can't do that. I said, that's not what you said. So they let me play a couple of little rounds, and they politely said, why don't you take a break? We'll finish it from here, which I was very thankful that they did.
Did he still have a hockey game going on when you got to Stargate?
Yeah, actually he did.
Oh, that's awesome.
He didn't ask me to play, which I'm very happy he didn't.
He might have remembered. He knew better.
He just said, no, you don't want Marshall out there because he doesn't play nice with others. He said, just nice to have you on the show, Marshall, that kind of thing. But yes, he did. He still had his league playing, and they played, and he didn't get to play as much because, my goodness gracious, just like MacGyver, he was in almost every scene.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're doing 12. I think they finally got him to the point that they would shoot him, I think it was 10 hours most.
Wow. You
got to give the guy a rest.
Yeah.
He was in everything.
I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I understand you work with our United States veterans and you do different
all the time
things to help them out. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, I've been working with different groups of veterans, I guess, ever since I got out. And I was on the board of directors of the Vietnam Veterans Aid Foundation for 3 years, getting help to veterans coming back, trying to get them, it was less then than it is now, the help they get, and it still has got places to go. But letting them know that they've got somebody to talk to, and, they're not going to walk up to just anybody that comes and say, hey, hi there, I'm here to help you. You're a veteran. I'm here to help you. Tell me about your life. That's not going to happen. When you go in there with them, whatever you're helping them with, doesn't matter whether you're building a house for them or anything else. So when they talk to you, they want to talk to somebody that understands the language that they speak, that not only listens, but hears what they have to say. And that's very important. It's the same thing in acting. It's not enough to listen. You have to hear what's being said and then respond accordingly. And it's the same thing with them. They're looking for someone that actually hears them. Not someone that goes out there and just says, yeah, man, I'm there for the vets. I've heard that till I'm blue in the face and it makes me want to puke. It's somebody that actually gets in there with them and spends the time to understand who they are, what they've seen, if they are so inclined to open up to you. Usually they won't open up to just anybody. They'll open up to fellow vets because that's who speaks their language. But there are other people that have actually gone in there and spent the time that they will open up to because they trust them. And going in there and telling them that they matter, their voice matters, what they have to say matters, and try to make that what they say heard by other people. You go out and you tell people, say, hey, pay attention to this. This is necessary. These are the guys that are keeping your butts safe every night, so you can sit there and say, well, I went out and I did this and I did that, I did this and I did that, and I had this much fun and all this other stuff. Those are the guys that are over there, and the gals too, guys and gals, because the ladies are over there doing the same job.
Right.
I don't want to take anything away from that at all. That was incorrect of me. Because there's women, men over there, and they're busting their butts to keep us safe. They're not playing the politics that they play in Washington. They're out there doing their job, and they do it very well. And they do it day in and day out for longer days than you can even imagine in environments, because I've been over to Iraq with them, and I can tell you right now, they live in environments that you wouldn't even think of. And they do it day in and day out. And they'll tell you right now, yeah, I do it for my country, and I do it for the guy next to me. I'm here to make sure that he goes home and I go home. I'm here to protect him just like he's here, and I know he's protecting me. I'm here for my brothers and my sisters. That's it. And that message needs to be heard. They're coming back here. They're not coming back here asking for a handout. The only thing they're asking is a hand up. Because you talk about a very, very dedicated group of human beings, the men and women that serve the armed forces are some of the best in the world, some of the best trained you can ever imagine. And they come back here and they are dedicated like you wouldn't believe. And the only thing they're looking for is a hand up, not a handout. They don't want your handout.
I like that.
Didn't mean to go off on my soapbox.
No, that's all right.
Occasionally I do, and I meant every word of it.
No, that's good. That's good. You're friends with Michael Gregory, and you work with him in any of those organizations that you...
We work with similar organizations. If he can't make it and I can, I go. And if, we always stay in communication with who's doing what for who. I'll tell him about organizations I'm working with, and if he's got the time, get involved. And he'll tell me the same thing. So we pass the baton back and forth and let our troops, returning troops, know that they matter. And they're not going to be forgotten. Not as long as I live, anyway.
That's good. When did you guys meet? Did you work together? I know you're in different episodes of Quantum Leap, but they're about the same time.
Oh, Michael and I have known each other for, 37 years.
Oh, wow.
We met years and years ago at a party by a mutual friend of ours, Ruth Conforti, who was a casting director and just a genuinely great human being. We were at a gathering she was doing, and we met, and just instantaneously we just kind of bonded and have been friends ever since.
That's awesome. You have a lot of upcoming projects. You're still very busy today.
Try to be.
You have some movies in post-production. Could you tell me about those?
Yeah, I've got a couple of them, as a matter of fact. I think 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one called One Heart, which is they're working on, getting it finished. One I just finished at the last part of 2014, which is called Road to the Well, kind of a very dark, mixed with humor. I don't know where to go with this. Dark, very dark. Let's just put it that way.
Very dark.
Very dark, but very interesting. I worked with a couple of new, young male actors, and they were just marvelous to work with. Just getting started in the business, I was looking at them, looking at myself, going, yeah, I was there once. But they were exceedingly talented, exceedingly giving, and, I was told they were warned. I don't know where that came from, but I was told they were warned. They said, the guy you're working with is playing this particular character. You want to make sure that you're kind of on your game, because if you're not, he will eat you alive. It couldn't have been nicer, and we got along immediately, and there wasn't any of that. I mean, from the time we hit the floor on this one scene that we were doing, and it takes place in one fell swoop, it's a 10-page scene. And when they rolled camera the first time, we went from front to back, a 10-page scene.
Wow.
Bang. And the director went, oh, my God. So that's where they came out of the box like that. So
I'm sure a director likes that. He's like, this is going to be a good project to work on, easier for him.
He was very, very excited, and just finished a very interesting movie called Armageddon, which deals with an Article 1306. It's one of the few articles that says that they can establish martial law in the United States and bring United States troops, which is against the law, our Constitution, to bring our own troops against our people.
Right.
And it touches on that.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I played Colonel Crane. Go figure.
Colonel.
Another colonel.
Yep.
People say, he's the bad guy. I said, no, he's not the bad guy. He's not a bad guy. What he is a military man, and he's following orders. You don't like him. You don't like what he's saying or what he's doing, but he's not necessarily the bad guy. He might have gone a little over the top at places, but he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's just a guy that has spent his entire life, and that's all his whole life is the military. As
an actor, you can't really play a bad guy, can you?
Oh, yes, you can.
Well, I mean, you have to understand why he's doing what he's doing, right?
It's interesting you said that. I played one character on Walker, And I got a call from Gerald McCraney, touching on exactly what you said. He said, I thought, and we've all learned as an actor that the bad guy has to have a redeeming quality of something that actually formed him into this. Something that at one point he wasn't a bad guy. He said, this is the first time I've ever seen somebody play a character that had absolutely no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Wow.
He said, my hat goes off to you. I didn't think you could be done, but you just did it.
Wow. The exception that proves the rule, right?
Well, it does, but, as a rule, it's true. I mean, when somebody's been this, you say, well, he was beat as a child or treated like crap or got crap into the stick or whatever, and he went off on the wrong road, he took the wrong exit. There's so many analogies you can put it to cause this to happen. And in most cases, that's very, very true. I don't think a person is necessarily at the point of birth inherently evil. I think things that take place around him form whatever happens in their life, but I just don't believe that. So to answer your question, no, there are no true bad guys. Well, when they become the guy,
right?
Yeah, they're evil.
That makes sense. I like that. You have some projects in pre-production too. What's your schedule like? You spend most of your time still filming different roles? Yeah, I do exactly what I have been for 37 years, a nomad. We travel from place to place. We do the jobs that we are given. And most exciting moment in my life is when they say roll camera. Those are the most exciting words you can imagine. And the saddest words are, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap. Because it means two things. One, you're unemployed. And two, that's the end of an incredible experience that you just had. So you go off to find that next incredible experience, which that's, in a lot of cases, that's why actors, at least I like to think that, is why all actors do what they do. They go for that next incredible experience or that next point of a creation, where they create a role. You got a couple episodes of American Crime coming up. Yeah, it's coming up this month, maybe next month. Okay, so soon. All I know, they didn't have title names. They just had them numbered. John Ridley, who did 12 Years a Slave, is the executive producer of this, and what a talented man. And he brought in absolutely off-the-scale group of writers, crew members, executive producers, writers, producers, that kind of thing. And actors, Timothy Hutton, Felicity Huffman, and all the rest of the people that were working on it, they were just absolutely top of the heap. It's a crime drama with so many pages to look in because it's 6 degrees of separation. And he did a masterful job of it, I think. Each season takes on a new story completely. That's the way it's designed anyway. It's not unlike American Horror Story. They'll do a season in a certain genre, and then the next season it'll change. And it keeps you very interested because you don't know what they're going to throw at you next. And it's like we don't know what's going to come at us from day to day. After almost 4 decades in the business, do you still get excited when you get to work with people of that caliber? Oh, excited is an understatement. I just absolutely just buzz, and it's been that way since day one. I think that day one was absolute fear because I was doing a show called Topper many years ago. And I think my first, it was Topper or it was Breaking Away. I get it. It's been so long ago, but I know my first speaking role was with Academy Award winning actor Jack Warden. That's your first day. That's your first day on the set. Go. You're going to be doing a scene with Jack Warden. By the way, he's an Academy Award winner. And God rest his soul, but, he couldn't have been nicer. He looked over at me and he sees this big guy standing over there, standing in the corner, trying to run the lines, hoping he gets everything, trying to create something. And he comes over, he said, "Hey, you nervous, kid? Hey, let me ask you a question. You smoke cigars?" I said, "Well, yeah, I occasionally like one." He said, "What, you drink a beer?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Come over here with me. Come right here. Smoke this cigar. Yeah, let's drink a beer." And we were in this bar, so it was kind of easy to get him. So we had a beer, and we smoked a cigar. We sat there and talked, and he told me a little bit about some of the shows he had been on over the years, and how to go about, how to look at it, good advice from, somebody that you look up to. Mm-hmm. He took that moment. He recognized the newness of this young guy. And then he said, "Hey, what do you say? Let's run the lines, you and me. We'll run the lines." We ran the lines a couple of times. He said, "Yeah, think about this right here. I'm going to do this again." "Okay, we'll do it again." Did it 2 or 3 times. He said, "Hell, you got this. Let's go do this thing. We're ready. Roll the camera." That's awesome. Yeah, and that was it. And that's your first experience? That's one of them, yeah. It was either that or Breaking Away, but I think that was the first real
speaking, what I'd say speaking role with I've had the pleasure over the years of working with, I think, 18 or 19 Academy Award winning actors.
Wow. You've been in so much. It sounds like you've really had a great career.
I've been blessed, man.
And do you feel lucky every day to do what you love and have people really love what you do?
Yeah, I really do. In my life, I can truthfully say that I have done and accomplished everything that I said I was going to. Am I as good at everything that I said I would be? I try to be. In acting, though, perfection is absolutely unattainable. You can't attain perfection because each role is different. You can be a name that says, oh, wow, and I'm just going to pick a couple of names out if you don't mind. You can pick De Niro. You can pick DiCaprio. You can pick Angelina Jolie, Charlize Theron. I like to mix them up, men and women. But they look at them and they say, these are incredible actors and actresses. Well, yeah, before them, they were also incredible actors and actresses. Sophia Loren, Anthony Quinn, Gregory Peck. Did they ever attain perfection? No, because they never stopped trying to attain it. If you ever get to the point in acting that you said, I've gotten as good as I'll ever get, then you've lost. You failed, because it means you're not going to try anymore. I mean, think about it. Do you ever say it, I'm as good as I'll ever get?
I hope not. I always want to improve. And I think that's the challenge, right?
It is the challenge. That's why we do what we do. I mean, anybody that is in the acting business, anybody, I would say that they're about half out of their mind. Because you go into a business, or if you don't like the word no, last week I had this role they liked me for. They said, well, they decided to go with a young black lady who I know. And I said, well, that's incredible, man. I said, it's great. I know her, and she's really, really good, and I'm happy for her. I said, but it's very obvious I can't be a female and I can't be black, and she did it marvelously. And I happen to know her, and I happen to like her, and I think she's very, very good, and I'm happy for her.
Yeah.
That's part of it. You also get to cheer for others. I like being what I am. I like doing what I do. I like to be the character they can pick for any role, because if you play the white hat hero all the time, well, that's what you're going to get known as. And most of the guys that have played those roles will tell you in a heartbeat, man, I'd really like to play a bad guy, or I'd like to play something else. When you play characters, which I've done for 37 years, there are no rules. You don't have to fall in a slot and play one thing. You get to play a lot of things. I think all actors would like to say, yeah, I'd like to work more. I'd like to work every single day, blah, 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 blah. Then when they work every single day for 5 years, they'd say, man, I'd really like a day off. We're all I guess, somewhat jaded in that respect because we do love what we do. I mean, I do. I can't speak for other actors, but the ones that I do know, people I've worked with that, have worked in many of these shows you talked about, these are people I've known for a long time. And occasionally we get to run into each other on the set again. And it's really a great day. And we never take it for granted.
That's awesome.
You just don't do that, I'm going to tell you something. We always like to toot our own horn or say like that. If people want to follow this thing and want to get to know me,
right,
they can do it. They can do it on Facebook and Twitter at Marshall R. Teague, and it's middle initial R. Mm-hmm. But they can go on Facebook or Twitter, and they can at Marshall R. Teague, and they can follow me if they want to know.
Very cool. I will have those links on the page of the interview.
That's terrific. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Also, are there any other links like for different charitable organizations, veterans things that I can put on there for you?
There are a lot of different ones over the years. I mean, we work with, like a show of support. You could just go on there for Smoky Mountain Thunder. That's going to be in Surreal on Memorial Day. I'm going to be there. They're going to show a movie of mine called Last Ounce of Courage, which opened in 2012, and it's about military men and women and the families and the people, every single solitary person that's out there. It really is about us as a nation and a people.
Do you have any projects that you've done that you really are proud of, but might not have got the wide release that you think it should, something that people should check out?
The one I just mentioned, as a matter of fact, did not, for whatever reason. I mean, people, looked at it and said, this is a political film, which it's not. And then some got on and said it's a religious film, which it's not. We talked about all religions and the freedom to have those religions. We didn't take sides. We just said that, let me practice mine. That's really it. And it said, understand that, the people, the reason we have these freedoms, and it's basically about freedom.
Very important.
It really is. It was basically just about the word freedom and 2 words, thank you. It was just to say thank you to those that keep us safe day in and day out. We don't know them all. We never will know them all, but they're out there. And it was just to say about, and it shows the other side, which is the families and the fact that we have these freedoms here at home, and the people that are out there in some cases that don't like us having those freedoms. It's a very simple message, but a lot of people tried to jump on board and say it was this or that. And when you really watch it, you find out it's really not. We didn't take sides. We just said, allow us our side.
Freedom is what keeps us free, right?
Yeah.
It's very important. Take me back to filming the poker scene on How the Tess Was Won, and tell me about your day.
First of all, I'm a lousy poker player. You know, I look really good at playing cards, but to be honest with you, I'm terrible. You know, it's like playing golf. Nobody invites me to play golf.
Or hockey.
or hockey. You know, they just don't ask me. I mean, I could sit there, and believe it or not, you know, Farnsworth was the one that told me, said, this is what you do. To be honest with you. Diamond Farnsworth was sitting there going, no. And Lance Legault, who was also there, he was sitting there going, said, you don't hold your cards like that. I mean, that's how bad I was. So all in all, I had a bunch of people that were there with us and, you know, were nice enough to sit there and make me look like I knew more about playing cards than I did. It was one of those days where you're sitting around the table.
That was on the Universal sound stages?
Yeah, they just built it there, and they had the standing sets that have been there for years. You know, they had a Western town downtown, so it was pretty easy to go in and, you know, they set up there's a bar and put up some tables and you sit around and you act like you know what you're doing. You call the words out so you sound like you know what you're doing.
It looked like you knew what you were doing.
Yeah. You're very kind. You're very kind. But truth be known, I'm not a very good card player.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of people that were good coaches.
That's good.
So I learned to listen to them.
Aces and eights.
Aces and eights.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really enjoyed talking to you. Do you have any final words to your fans that you've acquired over the years that might be listening to this?
Yeah. 2 words. Thank you. For all the years of being there and allowing me to come into your homes and either scare the crap out of you or somewhere along the line make you love me for whatever reason, and allowing me to continue to do this business that I absolutely love, I thank you. And I will continue to do this as long as you allow me to do it.
All right. Thank you for giving me so much of your time. I really appreciate it. I think this is going to be great. I think the listeners are going to love it. I
hope so. I really appreciate you calling and letting me be a part of this podcast. I mean, getting to talk to people or getting it out there, a way of talking to people is just terrific.